You should have completed the mini investigation on 8.3 where you used your calculator and threw some things into your y equals and looked at the effects that each A, B, and C has on the graph. And so I'm going to write up here the standard equation for a quadratic equation, and that's ax squared plus bx plus c. And we're going to fill this table in and show what each of these had effect on it. And then when you do the video for 8.3, the first 3 or 4 slides are just going to mimic this, so you can actually, if you watch this, you can skip those. So does the graph open up or down? So we're going to look at each of these. I'm going to number these so that I can kind of refer to these as each problems. And so I want to know, we're going to fill this table in for each part here. The first column says, does the graph open up and down? So let's kind of review what you found in that investigation. How do I know? How do I know if it opens up or down? Well, you're going to know that it opens up or down. And when I say up, I mean it makes it truly does a U. The opening is up and the down is a frowny face. And so how do we know? Well, we should already know this, but what we do know is that when A is greater than 0, it's going to open up, and when A is less than 0, it's going to open down. I always say positive people smile, negative people frown, and that's kind of what the same situation. So if we look at these numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4, we're just going to do all of these together. Well, we see that A in this case is 0.5, right? So A is greater than 0, so that's greater than 0, so we can see that this is going to open up. In this one here, A is equal to 5. 5 is greater than 0 again, so this is going to open up. In this case, A is equal to a -1, which is less than 0, so this is going to open down. A is equal to -3 here, which is less than 0, and so that's going to also open down. And then this last one, A is equal to 3, which is greater than 0, so this is going to open up. So we can quickly see whether the graphs are going to open up or down. Okay, so in this column here is the graph at narrow, average, and wide. And hopefully you saw in that little graphing investigation that it all depends on the value of that A value. And we saw that if absolute value of A is greater than 1, so 2, 3, 4, those legs are getting pretty steep, which then it makes it look like more of a vertical line. And so it's going to be pretty narrow graph. If the absolute value of A is equal to 1, that's our standard mother function, and so this is going to be what we consider our average graph. So if absolute value of A is less than 1, that is where we're going to see if it's wide, that it's going to be wide. It's going to be closer to a line. So if we come up here and look at number 1, A is equal to 0.5. Well, 0.5 is less than 1, and so that means this graph is going to be wide. It's going to look more like a horizontal line as that number gets closer to 0. In number 2, A is equal to 5. 5 is pretty steep, and so this is going to be a pretty narrow graph. This number 3, A is equal to -1, so the absolute value of -1 is 1, which we would just consider this an average graph. The next one, A is equal to -3, so the absolute value of -3 is 3. 3 is bigger than 1, so again, we're going to consider this a pretty narrow graph. And the same with number 5, A is equal to 3. 3 is greater than 1, so that is going to be a pretty narrow graph as well. Now this next column asks about the y-intercept. What did you discover in that y-intercept part of it? Well, you should have discovered that whatever the c value is equal to your y-intercept. So your c value is your y-intercept, and remember we write that as a 0, c. So for this column here, your y-intercept, if we come over here, your c is equal to -4, so that means your y-intercept is going to be 0, -4. In number 2, your c is equal to 2, and so your y-intercept is going to be 0, 2. In number 3, your c is equal to a -3, and so that means your y-intercept is going to be 0, -3, and so forth. Number 4, c is equal to -1, so this is going to be 0, -1. In this one, c is equal to 0.2, so this is going to be 0.2, right? So that's that. So A is going to tell us whether it opens up or down if it's positive. A is also going to tell us whether it's narrow, average, or wide. Your C value is going to give us that y-intercept. Well, here is where some people get lost. How do we determine that vertical shift? So if you look at taking that vertex and moving it left and right on that x-axis, how do we determine that? Well, this one actually plays. There's two different things that play into this, and that is the A and the B value. Then hopefully you can see that if A times B, so if we multiply the A times the B, and that is greater than 0, that means your shift is going to be to the left. So that vertex shifts left. And if you have A times B is less than 0, meaning one positive and one negative, up here one would be both would be negative or both be positive. Down here they're opposite. Then that shift is going to be shifting right. And we can think of that as, like your breakpoints. So when we had x minus 3 is equal to 0, we added the 3. The negative 3 actually makes it shift right. Same idea in this case. And so if we look at number 1, you have your A is 0.5, your B is negative 3. 0.5 times negative 3 is less than 0, and so that is going to shift right. So shift right. And number 2, you have 5 and you have 1, which that's greater than 0, so greater than 0 shifts left. Number 3, you have a negative 1 and a 3, which is less than 0. So this again is going to be a right shift. And then we're talking about the vertex now. And number 4, you have negative 3 times 2, again, which is less than 0. So this is going to have a right shift as well. And then the last one, we have 3, but our B value in this case is 0. So that's equal to 0. And so when it's equal to 0, so A times B is equal to 0, that means there's a no shift. So I'm hoping that's what you found in that mini investigation. And so when you get into the notes for 8.3, you won't have to, you can skip these first 3 or 4 slides.